Hey guys, so thanks for joining me for another Silhouette Sunday video. Today I'm going to be making a pretty simple card, but really my focus is going to be actually test cutting some sticky bark um, paper, like wood grain paper. And I found this paper at Joann's, and I know my local Joann still sells it, but I know you can also find it online. And I'm going to be seeing if it lives up to what it says on the packaging, which is that it cuts easily with all die cutters. Emphasis on the all. Um, didn't specify manual, so I'm going to see if it cuts or if I destroy a blade. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get started designing my card. Now, this is going to be a card that's partially manually die cutter and partially my silhouette. So I know I'm going to use a stitched die for this background piece, but I'm going to go ahead and draw it anyway on my mat for a frame of reference. So the die I'm going to be actually using to cut this out is by Lawn Fawn. It's their stitch die, and it measures 3 3/4 by 4.5. And this is just so I have a frame of reference for how big to cut my feathers, because I'm going to cut out 2 feathers using this sticky bark paper. So I have this already drawn out. I'm going to go ahead and go into my library and open the feathers. Whoops, let me click off. So I just move these. And I'm thinking I'm just going to leave them pretty large. So that seems big enough. So that's fine. And then I'm going to see if I have a banner in my collection to use. Oh, right there. And I'm kind of making this off the cuff. Like, I didn't really sit down and think this out. So hopefully this card comes out okay. So right click to ungroup this, and I'm going to delete all these images I don't need. So I don't need this and don't need this. And then this I'm going to shrink down so I can put my sentiment on it. Now normally I wouldn't use this handle right here, but because I don't want it to be super tall, I'm going to go ahead and use it. So it's going to end up being a little distorted than how it was originally intended, but that's okay. So that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and select this rectangle here because I don't need that. Delete it. And then I'm going to go ahead and send this to my silhouette. And it's not on, so you're going to see an error message pop up. Oh, I take that back. No error message. So in terms of the material type to use, this paper is not super thick. Even though you hear the word wood and you think, oh my gosh, it's really thick, it's really not. So I think I'm just going to use the cover stock setting, which has this at a blade depth of 7, which makes me a little nervous. But I'm going to go, I think that's the best option given how dense it is. So I'm going to go ahead and send this to the silhouette and we'll see how it turns out. I've already die cut all of my pieces, but I wanted to show you this 6x6 paper pad from my mind's eye. It's called Market Street, and it's where all my pattern paper for this card is coming from. I've already selected the background paper that I want to use, and it is a cream and teal like watercolor type pattern that's going to go against the back, and my feathers are going to sit on top of a piece of cream cardstock that I've die cut out using a Lawn Fawn stitched die. Now this is roughly how the card's going to look, the feathers on top of that cream piece of cardstock. But before I adhere the feathers down, I want to go ahead and add a little bit to the 2 tips of the feathers. So one feather I'm going to coat in embossing powder and a little bit of ink. So this ink is, I believe, Calypso Coral from Stampin' Up, and I'm just going to coat the tip of the feather with that ink and cover it with embossing powder and then set it using my heat embossing tool. And the other feather I'm going to coat using Versamark ink. And once I have it coated with Versamark ink, I'm going to use some Wow Gold embossing powder on top and heat set it using my heat tool. For the sentiment on the banner, I'm going to be using a stamp that says thanks from Hero Arts, and I just coated it with my anti-static tool so that when I emboss this greeting or sentiment on here, I don't get embossing powder everywhere. So I stamped the thanks, and now I'm just taking my Wow Gold embossing powder and coating the sentiment and then setting it using my heat embossing tool. Here I have all my pieces laid out and I'm ready to assemble my card. Now for that cream piece of cardstock that I've die cut, I'm going to adhere it to the card using a bit of dimensional adhesive, and I use several pieces so it doesn't sink in the middle when I attach the feathers. And I started to apply it straight, but I decided at the last minute that I kind of liked it crooked, so I just placed it slightly tilted, and my feathers are going to be adhered to the card using a bit of dimensional adhesive. Now this bark wood paper actually does have adhesive on the back, but I decided not to remove that paper from the back. I just left it in place and attached it to the card. I attached the main part of the banner down to the card using dimensional adhesive, but I decided to use liquid glue for the two tails so that the banner looked like it had actually been folded and it had a little bit of dimension to it. Now at this point the card is pretty much done, but I decided that the edges of the card still looked a little flat, so I took a little bit of Versamark ink and I went around just the edge of the card on all four sides, and I added a little bit of embossing powder just so that there was a little bit of a gold border along each of the edges of the card. Now I got a little bit of extra embossing powder in some places and I just knocked it off over the garbage can. And once I had each of the sides covered, I heat set it using my embossing tool. So here is what the final product looks like. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.